Welcome to my channel, the place where the most jaw-dropping Reddit stories come to life. From family drama to wild relationships, we dive deep into the real stories people can't stop talking about. If you love hearing juicy Reddit tales, binge-worthy updates, and stories that make you say, "No way that really happened," you're in the right spot. So grab a snack, settle in, and don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the bell, so you never miss the next story time. Story 1. My boyfriend mistook my human decency for feminism. Aita for wanting to end this relationship. So, I'm Emily, 21F, and I've been dating my boyfriend Ryan, 21M, for a little over a year now. At first, things seemed really solid. He's funny, outgoing, always up for an adventure, and I genuinely thought we had a good balance. But recently, a conversation made me question whether he even sees me for who I am, and now I can't shake the thought of ending things. Here's what happened. The other night, Ryan and I were on the phone just chatting, when he brought up his friend Josh, 23M. Josh has been in this messy relationship with a girl named Samantha, 19F. From what Ryan told me, Samantha and Josh met online and started dating long distance. Josh is deeply religious, and Samantha wasn't, but because she wanted to be with him so badly, she actually converted to his faith. That decision basically blew up her whole life. Her family disowned her, she lost a lot of support, and she went through a ton of emotional stress. But she stuck with Josh, even while they were long distance. Then, when they finally met in person and spent 2 weeks together, Josh suddenly decided he didn't actually have feelings for her anymore. He broke up with her after everything she sacrificed for him. 2 days later, Josh calls Ryan saying he thinks he still loves her. Not even a solid "I do," just a "maybe." So Ryan asks me for a female perspective. I tried to keep it fair and neutral. I told him I didn't think Josh should get back with Samantha. He had already proven he didn't love her enough to commit, and if he went back now, he'd just waste both of their time and potentially hurt her even more. I added that if Josh really cared about her as a person, he should let her go and stop complicating her life after everything she already gave up for him. Ryan's response? He said Josh should get back with her because she's pretty, nice, and clearly loves him. That floored me. I told him that was shallow and unfair, because if Josh doesn't genuinely love her, he'd just be taking advantage of her vulnerability. Looks and kindness don't equal love. That's when Ryan snapped back with, "You're such a feminist." Not everything has to be about feminism. I just sat there stunned. I explained that what I said had nothing to do with feminism, it was about human decency. If the roles were reversed, and it was my friend who ditched some guy after he changed his entire life for her, I'd tell her the exact same thing: leave him alone. You don't play with people's lives like that. But Ryan doubled down. He said I was being unrealistic, that I didn't know Samantha personally so I shouldn't take her side, and that I watch way too many women empowerment videos. He said it with this mocking tone, like he was insulting me. That was the moment something shifted for me. I realized that Ryan uses feminist like it's a dirty word. He completely dismissed my perspective because it didn't align with his friend's side. And the worst part? He admitted that Samantha was a total sweetheart, a kind person who did nothing wrong, but still thought Josh should get another chance just because she was attractive and loyal. I've been sitting with that conversation for days now. And honestly, I'm seriously considering ending this relationship. Not because Ryan is the worst boyfriend ever, he isn't, but because I feel like he doesn't actually see me. He doesn't respect my values, he mocks my beliefs, and he treats my empathy like it's some over-the-top feminist agenda. I've always been open about the fact that I am a feminist, and proud of it. But this particular conversation wasn't about gender politics. It was about basic human respect. And he still managed to twist it into some dig about feminism. At the end of the day, I can't help but think, if he doesn't understand me now, at 21, what happens later in life when things get more serious? When bigger decisions come up? Will he dismiss my perspective every time just because it doesn't match his? So, Reddit, Aita for wanting to end this relationship over what might seem like just one conversation. Or is this actually a bigger sign that Ryan and I are not compatible? Update. Hi again, it's Emily. After sitting with this for a while, I decided to break up with Ryan. Technically, I told him we should take a break because I needed time to think, but truthfully, I just needed space to gather the courage to make it final. My mind was already made up. When I said I wanted the break, he freaked out a little. He said, "You know what happens when couples take breaks, right? They break up." He wasn't wrong. Look, I want to be fair here. Ryan wasn't some monster boyfriend. He did have good qualities. He respected my boundaries when I said I wasn't ready to be intimate. He apologized when he made small mistakes. He tried to be sweet in his own way. And for a while, I loved him and thought we had a future. But over time, I noticed that his love felt shallow. When I once asked him why he wanted to be with me, I gave him my reasons. He was kind, supportive, respectful, made me laugh, and I could picture growing together. His answer: because you're beautiful. Girls like you are rare. You'd make a good wife, take care of a family, and you cook. I laughed at first, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. And the more time went by, the clearer it became. He mostly valued me for my looks and what I could do for him, not for who I actually am. He never understood my drive, my ambition, or my passion for fairness. Anytime feminism came up, he rolled his eyes and told me I was overthinking things. When I vented about professors dismissing me in med school because I looked too pretty to be smart, he brushed it off like I was exaggerating. And in arguments, he constantly twisted my words, tried to flip things on me, and then only admitted fault once I called him out directly. He even once claimed he was the only one putting effort into the relationship, when I knew I was giving everything I could. The breaking point for me was realizing he took my forgiveness for granted. He knew I'd forgive him eventually, so sometimes he didn't even take our fight seriously. That kind of disrespect just cut too deep. So yeah, I ended things. It hurts, but I feel like I made the right choice. TLDR, I, 21F, dated my boyfriend, 21M, for a year, but after he dismissed my empathy as feminism and repeatedly showed he only valued me for my looks, I realized he doesn't truly understand or respect me. I broke up with him. Stories number 2. Aita for prioritizing my children's relationship over my wife's preference. I, 42M, let's call me David, have 4 kids. My oldest, Ethan, 19M, is from my first marriage with my ex-wife Karen, 41F. My 3 younger kids, Liam, 13M, Sophie, 12F, and Noah, 6M, are with my current wife Melissa, 39F. Ethan is in college across the country in California. He'd just gotten back from studying abroad for the summer, and there was this 2-week period before classes started again where he wasn't tied down with commitments. He asked if the family could come visit, and honestly, I thought it was a great idea. He doesn't get to see his siblings often, and I know how easy it is for age gaps to turn into emotional gaps if you don't nurture those connections. So, without thinking much about it, I told him, yeah, we'll come visit. Later that night, I told Melissa about the trip. She immediately got annoyed and said, you committed without asking me first. I told her we didn't have any plans during those 2 weeks, so what was the harm? She shot back that I couldn't know we didn't have plans unless I checked with her. I said if there were plans I didn't know about, then she made a commitment without asking me either. That was kind of a mic drop moment, but it also didn't resolve anything. A few days later, she dropped on me that some of our mutual friends had invited us on a trip during that same window. She was really excited about it. But the dates overlapped with Ethan's free time. I told her, we already committed to visiting Ethan. She snapped back, we didn't commit. You did. And so the argument restarted. Here's where it got messy. I said, look, if you don't want to go, fine. But the kids and I are going. Ethan is their brother, and it's important they spend time together now that he's an adult. Melissa got even more upset and told me, you know I hate California. Why would you assume I'd be okay going there? I told her bluntly, then don't go. I'll take them myself. She didn't like that answer either. The fight escalated, so I suggested, let's just ask the kids what they want. If they want the trip with your friends, we'll do that. If they want to visit Ethan, we'll do that. So, we sat the kids down. Melissa really hyped up her friend trip, talking about beaches, fun activities, ice cream shops, and then downplayed California, saying it'd be boring, hot, crowded, etc. But the kids didn't budge. Liam and Sophie immediately said they wanted to see their brother, and even little Noah shouted, California. Ethan. Melissa looked crushed, but I wasn't going to overrule the kids. They chose family, and that meant a lot to me. Fast forward to the trip, Melissa refused to come. I took all 3 kids by myself. And honestly, we had an amazing time. Ethan was so happy to see his siblings. They went hiking, played video games, hung out at the beach, and even did a family dinner where Sophie insisted on cooking with Ethan. The kids bonded in ways that wouldn't have happened over FaceTime or a quick weekend visit. I came home feeling like I'd done the right thing. But Melissa? She was cold. Frosty. Barely talking to me except for logistics. And then, last week, she sat me down and dropped a bomb. I think we need couples counseling. I agreed, because I do love her and I don't want this to spiral into something irreparable. We've got our first appointment in September. But all my friends, married and divorced, say counseling is usually the beginning of the end. Now I'm second-guessing myself. Was I really the AH for prioritizing my kids' bond over a friend trip? Was I an AH for not looping her into the decision first? I love my wife, but I also love my kids and believe siblings should stick together. Is that so wrong? Update, Aita for prioritizing my children's relationship over my wife's preference. Hey everyone, it's me again, David. A lot has happened since my original post, and I figured it's only fair I circle back with an update. Honestly, I didn't expect so many people to weigh in, and I read way more YTA versus NTA comments than I thought I could handle in one sitting. Some of you were brutal, but some of you gave me perspective I really needed. So, here's what's gone down. Couples counseling. We had our first counseling session earlier this month. I'll admit, I went in nervous, fully expecting to get roasted by both Melissa and the therapist. But it wasn't that. The therapist, Dr. Reynolds, mid-50s, very calm energy, set the tone by saying, "This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about how both of you feel unseen in the relationship." That actually landed. Because Melissa came right out and said she felt like I make unilateral family decisions, without including her. She used Ethan as an example, but then brought up other things, like me enrolling Liam in basketball last year without running it by her first. In my mind, Ethan wanted to play, it didn't conflict with anything, so what's the harm? I tried to defend myself, but the therapist cut me off and said, "David, let's let Melissa finish." That stung, but I shut up. When it was my turn, I told Melissa I felt like she downplays Ethan's importance. I said flat out, he's my son. He's their brother. If we don't make time for him, those bonds fade. And when I see you hyping up a vacation with friends over letting the kids see him, it feels like you don't care about that. She started crying, which, to be honest, threw me. She said she does care about Ethan, but she feels like she'll never measure up to my first family. She said it sometimes feels like Ethan is a symbol that she came second in my life. That one hit hard because, yeah, I didn't even realize she thought that way. The kids' perspective. We also had a smaller, family meeting with just the kids, at Dr. Reynolds' suggestion. It was, surprisingly wholesome. Liam said, "I just wanted to hang out with Ethan. He's my big brother." Sophie said, "Mom, you kept saying California is boring, but I had the best time ever. And Ethan made me pancakes." Even Noah, bless him, said, "Mom, Ethan's my brother too." Melissa looked really emotional hearing that. She didn't argue back, just kind of nodded and wiped her eyes. Where we're at now. Since counseling started, things have improved, a little. Melissa has admitted she felt left out and overshadowed. I've admitted I bulldoze ahead sometimes without including her. We're both trying. But, it's not magically fixed. She's still distant some nights. There's still tension when Ethan calls me. She doesn't sit in for FaceTime calls with him, though the kids do. And just yesterday, she made a comment like, "I hope we don't have to spend every vacation flying across the country." So yeah, it's not solved. But at least now we're talking about it instead of freezing each other out. Where I stand. I'll be real, I don't regret taking the kids to see Ethan. I do regret not looping Melissa in sooner. That was on me. I get now how it felt like I dismissed her completely. But I'm also not backing down on my stance, my kids' sibling bond matters. Ethan's not some optional add-on to the family. He's their brother, full stop. We've got another counseling session next week, and Melissa actually asked if Ethan would be willing to call in for part of it. That gave me hope. Maybe she wants to bridge the gap after all. TLDR, update. Counseling started, not a train wreck, but definitely tense. Melissa admitted she feels like Ethan represents her, coming second. Kids made it clear they want to see Ethan and don't see him as separate family. Melissa is still distant sometimes but open to working on it. Not fully resolved, but hopeful progress. Final update, Aita for prioritizing my children's relationship over my wife's preference. It's been about 6 months since I first posted, and I figured it's time to close the loop. A lot of people asked for an update, and honestly, this whole situation changed my marriage in ways I didn't expect. Counseling has been the single most important thing we did. In the beginning, I went in defensive, thinking Melissa just didn't care about Ethan. Over time, though, I realized it wasn't about her not caring, it was about her feeling like an outsider in her own family. She admitted that she's always felt like Ethan is a reminder that I had a life before her, and in her mind, she'll never truly be first. That resentment spilled out in ways I didn't recognize at first. When she pushed for the vacation with friends, it wasn't just about wanting fun, it was her trying to carve out something that was hers, not connected to my ex-wife or my past. The therapist really pushed us to see that both things can be true, Ethan deserves to be prioritized, and Melissa deserves to feel like she has agency in our family. That reframing honestly saved us. The biggest breakthrough came when Melissa agreed to fly out with us for Thanksgiving to see Ethan. She dragged her feet at first, but when we got there, she saw how excited the kids were, and how much Ethan had grown into his role as a big brother. He wasn't just my son with another woman anymore, he was their brother, plain and simple. Ethan and Sophie cooked together, Liam played video games with him for hours, and Noah followed him around like a puppy. Melissa sat back and watched, and I caught her smiling more than once. Later that night, she told me she understood why I fought so hard for this. We're still in counseling, but the tone is different now. Instead of arguments about my son versus her plans, we talk about scheduling together, making sure both family bonding and couple time are on the calendar. For the first time, Melissa suggested that maybe next summer we invite Ethan to come with us on a trip instead of always flying out to see him. That felt huge. As for Ethan, he told me he's grateful I brought his siblings out, because he was starting to worry they'd forget about him once he moved away. Hearing him say that made me realize I'd do it all over again, fights and all. So no, I don't regret prioritizing my kids' bond. But I do regret not making Melissa feel like part of that choice. That's where I went wrong. Now, instead of fighting each other, we're slowly learning to fight for the family together. Final TLDR, counseling worked better than I expected. Melissa admitted her resentment came from feeling like Ethan symbolized her coming second. We flew out as a family for Thanksgiving, she finally saw why I prioritized the trip. The kids bonded with Ethan, and Melissa softened toward him. Now we're planning trips together with Ethan included, instead of fighting about it. Marriage isn't perfect, but it's on stronger ground than before. Stories number 3. Aita for disrespecting my ex-wife's new husband with the crime of getting along with my former IL's ex-wife, 34F, and I, 36M, divorced 4 years ago after a 2.5-year-long divorce. We split physical and legal custody of our children, 11, 9 and 6. Things are not civil, and as you can tell our divorce process started during her pregnancy with our youngest. I won't go into all the details, but we divorced after a large financial betrayal on top of years of both of us feeling like there was little respect for the other. The divorce was not civil and it dragged on for as long as it did, not because of the pregnancy alone but for financial reasons. My ex was dating her current husband by the end of our divorce, and it was an awkward period. Ex's family and I remain on good terms, which bothers her husband and always did. Because my ex doesn't want to take the kids shopping for my birthday or Father's Day when asked, her parents have, and that bothers him because they don't do the same for him. I do it for my ex because the kids ask. I include Christmas gifts in that because again I'm asked. Her husband doesn't like it, but he sure as hell never has. The most recent issue came up when my kids asked to have me for father and kids photos that my ex's family were organizing. They invited me and I went and took the photos with my kids. Ex's family and I talked for a while and I left the event early, but it pissed him off that I talked to ex's family at all and didn't leave as soon as the photos were done. But what really bothered him was I was invited instead of them having him stand in for the dad photos. The kids didn't get photos with him that day, which may have created more problems. But ultimately he complains that I disrespected him by getting along with his wife's family, his words, and she's got his back because she thinks it's unfair her family doesn't hate me like she does. Stories number 4. Aita for telling my brother's fiancé that my daughter isn't her practice child. Hi Reddit. I, 34F, let's call me Jessica, have a 7-year-old daughter, Emily. I share custody with my ex-husband, Ryan, 36M, and while co-parenting isn't always easy, we found a rhythm that works for us. My younger brother Daniel, 30M, has been dating his fiancée Samantha, 29F, for about 3 years, and they got engaged last spring. Samantha is, let's just say, very eager to start a family. She constantly talks about wanting kids, being a mom, how she's practicing for motherhood, etc. Here's the issue, lately she's been using Emily as her trial run child, without asking me. For example, when we're at family dinners, she insists on feeding Emily her food, even when Emily says she can do it herself. She makes little comments like, "You have to eat your vegetables if you want to be big and strong," in that sing-song mom voice. At Thanksgiving, she asked if Emily could sit in her lap during dinner because moms always hold the kids. Emily looked super uncomfortable and said, "I can sit in my own chair." Samantha pouted and said, "She's so independent, maybe too independent." The last straw was 2 weekends ago. Daniel and Samantha came over to my house because they wanted to spend quality time with Emily. I thought it would just be hanging out, but Samantha took it way too far. She started telling Emily it was bedtime, at 7:30 p.m., even though Emily's bedtime is 9 on weekends. She literally tried to carry Emily upstairs like she was tucking her in. I stepped in immediately and told her, "You don't get to parent my child. Emily isn't your practice kid." The room went silent. Samantha looked like I slapped her. Daniel pulled me aside later and said I was rude and embarrassed his fiancée. He said Samantha is just excited to be a mom and that she needs the practice. I told him flat out that Emily is not a doll, not a training exercise, and Samantha needs to respect boundaries. Emily already has 2 parents. Now the family is split. My mom, Linda, 58F, thinks I overreacted and should let Samantha play mom, because it's harmless and she's just enthusiastic. My dad, Mark, 60M, is on my side and said Samantha was being overbearing. Ryan, my ex, is furious about it and told me if Samantha tries that again when Emily's with me, he'll ban Emily from being around them entirely. He thinks I was too nice and should have shut it down months ago. Daniel and Samantha aren't talking to me right now. My mom keeps saying I need to apologize before the wedding because I hurt Samantha's feelings. But I don't feel like I was wrong, I was protecting my daughter's boundaries. So. Aita for snapping and telling my brother's fiancé that my daughter isn't her practice child. Update. Hi again, Reddit. Thanks for all the feedback on my original post. I wasn't expecting it to blow up, but I read through so many comments and a lot of you gave me some perspective. A lot of people told me I wasn't crazy for setting boundaries, and honestly, that gave me the push I needed to stand firm. So here's what happened after I posted. A week later, my brother Daniel invited me out to coffee. I figured it was going to be a civil chat, but it quickly turned into him defending Samantha again. He said she cried after my comment, that she feels like I hate her, and that she was just trying to bond with Emily. I told him, point blank, bonding is great, but parenting is different. Emily has parents, me and Ryan. Samantha is welcome to be an aunt, a friend, a bonus adult, but she doesn't get to cross that line. Daniel kept pushing, so I asked him how he'd feel if Ryan's new girlfriend, yes, Ryan has been seeing someone casually named Megan, started bossing Emily around, putting her to bed, and acting like she was mom. He went quiet. Then he admitted he wouldn't like it either. That seemed to click with him a little, but he still asked me to apologize for the way I snapped. I told him I wouldn't apologize for protecting my daughter, but I'd be willing to have an open conversation with both him and Samantha about boundaries. Fast forward to the family dinner last weekend. I sat down with Samantha and calmly explained, I'm glad she loves kids and is excited to be a mom. I'm not against her having a relationship with Emily. But Emily is not a trial run, and she deserves respect as her own person. Samantha was defensive at first, I was just trying to help, but when I reminded her that Emily looked uncomfortable and that even my dad noticed, she softened a bit. She admitted she might have been a little too much. Ryan, meanwhile, told me he was serious about pulling Emily from family gatherings if boundaries weren't respected. That part hit Samantha hard. I think she realized this isn't just me being overprotective, but something with real consequences. Since then, things have been cautious. Samantha hasn't tried to parent Emily again, but she's definitely a little cold toward me. Daniel seems torn, he wants to support his fiancée, but I think he knows I'm not being unreasonable. My mom, Linda, is still making passive-aggressive comments about how I ruined family harmony, but my dad, Mark, has been a rock. We're still going to the wedding, but I told Daniel I won't tolerate Emily being put in the middle of this. If it happens again, we're leaving. So yeah, it's not fully resolved, but at least the boundaries are clearer now. TLDR, brother's fiancée, Samantha, was using my daughter, Emily, as a practice child. I snapped and told her Emily isn't her trial run. Drama followed. After talking it out, I reinforced boundaries, Samantha can be an aunt, not a parent. Things are still tense, but she backed off, for now. Stories number 5. Aita for canceling the family vacation I paid for after everyone kept complaining. Hi Reddit, I need some outside perspective because right now I feel like I'm losing my mind. 36F, let's call me Emily, spent almost an entire year saving up for what was supposed to be a fun, relaxing family trip. I work full-time as a nurse, I juggle 2 kids, and honestly this vacation was as much for me as it was for everyone else. The plan was simple: rent a big cabin in the Smoky Mountains, stay a full week, do some hiking, have bonfires, maybe a little fishing, and just disconnect. I thought it would be the perfect chance for us to spend time together as a family. Here's who came. My husband, Mark, 38M, our 2 kids, Lily, 9F, and Jacob, 7M, my parents, Karen, 62F, and Robert, 64M, my brother, Daniel, 34M, and his wife, Samantha, 32F. So in total, 8 of us. I booked a really nice cabin. It wasn't super luxurious but it had 4 bedrooms, a big kitchen, a game room in the basement, and a hot tub on the deck with an amazing mountain view. Honestly, I thought it was beautiful. I also covered most of the costs: lodging, groceries, gas for the trip, and even some pre-booked activities like horseback riding and a scenic train tour. The only thing people really needed to bring money for was souvenirs or anything extra they wanted. From the moment we arrived, though, it was like everyone decided to make it their personal mission to ruin things. My mom, Karen, took one look around and wrinkled her nose. She said the cabin felt too rustic and she wasn't sure she could sleep without a proper hotel mattress. Mind you, this place had queen-sized beds with memory foam mattresses, not sleeping bags on the floor. My dad, Robert, immediately started complaining about the food. He said there weren't enough restaurant options nearby, that the grocery store was too small, and that he didn't come on vacation to eat spaghetti like at home. My brother, Daniel, complained there was nothing to do. He wanted nightlife, bars, maybe even a casino. I reminded him we were literally in the mountains, surrounded by hiking trails and nature. His response: "That's boring." My SAL, Samantha, took things a step further. She made little snide comments all the time like, "Wow, all this money for a place without even a spa," or, "I guess Emily tried." That one really stung. My husband, Mark, the one person I thought would have my back, basically sulked the entire time because the Wi-Fi wasn't strong enough to stream his shows. He literally said, "I feel cut off from the world." I wanted to scream, that's the point. Meanwhile, I was the one cooking, cleaning, driving everyone to the activities, and trying to keep spirits up. I organized a bonfire the first night, nobody cared. I made breakfast every morning, barely a thank you. I suggested a family hike, half the group whined that it was too hot. By day 3, I was running on fumes. And then came the breaking point. We were getting ready for the scenic train ride I had prepaid for. Everyone was dragging their feet, complaining again, and then my SAL, Samantha, looked around the cabin and said, "Honestly, this feels like such a waste of money. We could have gone to Florida or somewhere with actual fun things to do." I snapped. Like, full-on lost it. I called a family meeting in the living room and said, "Okay, since everyone clearly hates this trip, guess what? I'm done. I'm not cooking, I'm not driving, and I'm not hosting anymore. I canceled the activities for the rest of the week. If you want to do something, figure it out yourselves. I'm going to actually enjoy the cabin I paid for." Dead silence. Then the outrage started. My mom said I was being dramatic. My brother said I ruined the trip. My dad grumbled that I wasted all this money. My husband asked me to be reasonable. Even my kids were upset because they were looking forward to the horseback riding, and now it wasn't happening. But I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like a maid, a chauffeur, and a punching bag. Nobody seemed grateful, nobody even tried to meet me halfway. I didn't want to spend the rest of my vacation catering to people who clearly didn't want to be there. So yeah, the rest of the trip was awkward. People mostly did their own thing. My brother and SIL drove into town to find bars. My parents just sat around watching TV. My husband sulked some more. I took my kids hiking and honestly, those were the only good moments I had. Now we're back home and everyone is still saying I overreacted and ruined the vacation. They keep bringing up the activities I canceled and how the kids missed out. My mom told me next time someone else should plan the trip since I don't know how to make everyone happy. But here's the thing, I don't think it was my job to make everyone happy. I gave them a week in a beautiful cabin, I paid for almost everything, and instead of being grateful, they tore me down at every turn. So Reddit. Aita for canceling the vacation activities after everyone complained non-stop. Update, Aita for canceling the family vacation I paid for after everyone kept complaining. Hi again, Reddit. Wow, I wasn't expecting my original post to blow up the way it did. I read through so many comments, and honestly, the outside perspective was what I needed. Thank you to everyone who told me I wasn't crazy. A lot has happened since I first posted, so here's the update. The immediate fallout. When we got home, things didn't magically reset. My mom, Karen, called me the day after we unpacked and immediately launched into a lecture about how I ruined a once-in-a-lifetime family trip. She said my kids, Lily and Jacob, would remember it as the boring cabin trip where mom got mad. I told her very calmly that what I remembered was spending thousands of dollars and weeks of effort, only to have everyone complain from the second we arrived. She brushed that off and said I was being too sensitive. My dad, Robert, chimed in a couple days later, basically repeating the same thing. He said, vacations are supposed to be about fun, not proving a point. I asked him if he thought complaining non-stop for 3 days was fun, and he just got quiet and then changed the subject. My husband, Mark, this one hurts the most. He admitted to me privately that yeah, he was kind of a jerk during the trip. But instead of apologizing, he said, well, you know I don't like being cut off from the internet. You should have picked somewhere better. I was floored. I told him I felt like he abandoned me during the trip instead of being my partner. His response. I didn't ask you to plan this trip. You decided on your own. That one stung like hell. Because technically, he's right, but I thought I was doing something for all of us. I told him I wasn't going to plan anything for him again if he couldn't appreciate the effort. Since then, things have been icy. We're talking, but it's strained. My brother Sal, Daniel Samantha. Oh boy. They were the loudest complainers during the trip, and they doubled down afterward. My Sal, Samantha, actually sent me a text saying, next time, let someone who knows how to plan a vacation handle it. We wasted a week of PTO for nothing. I didn't even respond. Daniel, my brother, ended up calling me a few days later, but instead of apologizing, he basically tried to guilt-trip me. He said, you know mom and dad are upset. You could have just let things roll off your back instead of blowing up. I told him flat out that I wasn't his babysitter, his travel agent, or his ATM, and if he wanted a Vegas trip or nightlife, he could plan it himself next time. His answer. Fine. Maybe I will. My parents again. After about a week of silence, my parents invited me and the kids over for dinner. I went, without my husband, he wasn't in the mood, and it turned into another round of, why did you cancel the activities? I finally snapped again, but this time I was calmer. I laid it out. I paid for almost everything. I spent my time cooking, cleaning, and driving everyone around. Instead of gratitude, I got complaints. And when I finally stood up for myself, I became the villain. My mom tried to argue but my dad actually stopped her. He didn't exactly side with me, but he admitted that maybe they weren't very gracious during the trip. That's the closest thing I've gotten to an apology. The kids, Lily Jacob. This is the part that broke my heart but also gave me clarity. One night before bed, my daughter, Lily, asked me, Mom, why was everyone mad at you on vacation? You worked so hard. That nearly brought me to tears. She noticed. Even at 9 years old, she saw what was happening. My son, Jacob, said he had fun with me on the hikes, even if everyone else was grumpy. Hearing that made me realize, the trip wasn't actually ruined. The adults ruined it for themselves, but my kids still got good memories. That counts for something. Where I stand now, after reading everyone's comments on my first post and reflecting on all of this, I've come to a decision. I'm not planning family vacations anymore. If anyone wants to get together, they can plan and pay for it themselves. Going forward, my money and energy will go into trips just for me, my husband, if he wants to come, and the kids. Speaking of which, I already booked a long weekend at a beach resort for me, Lily, and Jacob during fall break. Mark hasn't decided if he's coming, but honestly, if he doesn't, I'll still go and enjoy it. Because here's the thing, I deserve to enjoy my own vacations too. Final thoughts. Do I regret snapping during the mountain trip? Not really. Maybe I could have handled it more gracefully, but at some point, you just reach your breaking point. And now that I've had time to sit with it, I realize I wasn't the one who ruined the trip. Everyone else chose to focus on the negatives instead of being grateful for what they had. So yeah. Lesson learned. I won't be repeating that mistake again. Thanks again, Reddit, for validating me when my own family wouldn't. Stories number 6. Aita for being upset that my girlfriend made a racism complaint on my behalf and demanding she withdraw it and apologize. Hey Reddit, I need some judgment here because I'm torn between feeling gaslit and wondering if I really am being too passive. I'm Marcus, 26M, black. My girlfriend Hannah, 28F, white, and I have been together for 4 years. We have a 2-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan takes after Hannah a lot, light skin, blondish hair, blue eyes. I even joked when he was born that he looked nothing like me, but hey, DNA test confirmed, he's mine. Genetics are funny. Anyway, Ethan goes to a daycare near Hannah's work. She does most of the pickups and drop-offs, since her office is just a few blocks away. I don't usually go unless it's a weekend event or if Hannah can't make it. A few days ago, Hannah wasn't feeling well, so I went to pick up Ethan for the first time in a while. I walked into the daycare, and immediately I realized almost all the staff in his room were new. I hadn't met them before. A young worker, maybe 20 or 21, came to the door. Let's call her Kelsey. I said, hey, I'm here to pick up Ethan, last name. Kelsey looked startled for a second and said, you're his father. I said, yeah. She told me she hadn't met me yet and asked for my name. I gave it to her, she checked the list, and she said, right, you're on here. Then she asked, do you mind showing me ID? Or is there another staff member who can vouch for you? Now, in that moment, there were a few moms behind me waiting to pick up their kids, and I could feel their eyes on me. A couple of them jumped in saying, that's definitely his son, don't worry about it. But honestly, I didn't feel offended. I know Ethan looks nothing like me. And I get that daycare workers are responsible for safety. I pulled out my driver's license, showed her, and even showed her my phone wallpaper of Hannah, me, and Ethan together. She looked super embarrassed. She kept apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry, I just wasn't sure. I told her, no worries at all. Honestly, when Ethan was born, I wasn't sure either, and laughed it off. She looked relieved and said thanks. I left thinking it was a slightly awkward but harmless interaction. If anything, I respected that she was careful. If some random guy came in saying they were picking up my kid, I'd hope staff wouldn't just hand him over. I thought that was the end of it. The fallout. That evening, one of the moms who witnessed it called Hannah. She told her the whole story, except with a tone that made it sound like I'd been profiled. Hannah was furious on my behalf. Without even asking me, she got together with a group of moms, all white, by the way, and they filed a complaint against the daycare. They said the staff member racially profiled me, made me feel uncomfortable, and discriminated against our family. I only found out 2 days later when Hannah casually mentioned, don't worry, we reported that girl. She shouldn't get away with treating you like that. My jaw dropped. I told her, wait, what? Why would you do that? She wasn't racist. She was just doing her job. Hannah insisted, no, Marcus. She singled you out because you're black. If it were me or any other white mom or dad, she wouldn't have asked for ID. I pushed back. I told her daycare staff always have the right to ask for ID if they don't know someone. That's literally part of child safety protocol. But Hannah wouldn't budge. She kept saying she was protecting our family. The awkward pickup. The next day, I went to pick up Ethan again. Guess who was at the door? Kelsey. Except this time, she didn't say anything. She just opened the door and avoided eye contact. Another staff member came over and handed me Ethan. Later that evening, I got a call from the daycare manager. She said there had been a complaint filed about a possible racial incident involving me and asked me to explain what happened. I told her everything exactly as it went down, emphasizing that I didn't feel discriminated against at all. The manager sighed and said, okay, thank you for clarifying. Unfortunately, once a complaint is filed, we have to follow through with an investigation. Until it's resolved, staff involved aren't allowed to interact with you directly. So now, this poor 20-year-old girl is under investigation for racism she didn't commit, all because Hannah and her mom's squad thought they were being my saviors. The blow-up at home. When I got home, I confronted Hannah. I said, you had no right to make that complaint without talking to me first. You made it look like I was a victim when I wasn't. Now this girl might get disciplined or even fired for literally doing her job. Hannah snapped back, Marcus, you don't understand. You've been desensitized to racism. You've dealt with it your whole life, so you don't see it anymore. That girl humiliated you in front of other parents. I told her, no, she didn't. She asked for ID. That's not humiliation, that's protocol. And I even joked about it. I was fine. You turned it into a racial incident that it wasn't. We had a huge argument. I demanded she withdraw the complaint and apologize to the staff member. She refused, saying that would make me look weak and teach Ethan it's okay for people to question his family. At that point, I was livid. I told her she's not fighting racism, she's playing the white savior. She's using me as her excuse to feel morally superior, and now she's potentially wrecking a young woman's career over a non-issue. Hannah cried and said I was being ungrateful for her protecting me. Where I stand, I've experienced real racism before. People following me in stores, cops pulling me over for no reason, coworkers making jokes. I know what racism feels like. And this? This wasn't it. This was a young woman making sure a kid wasn't handed over to the wrong person. Now Hannah is giving me the silent treatment because I told her she was wrong. Meanwhile, I feel guilty as hell that Kelsey is being investigated for something she didn't do. So. Aita for being mad at my girlfriend, demanding she withdraw the complaint, and insisting she apologize. Update, Aita for being upset that my girlfriend made a racism complaint on my behalf and demanding she withdraw it and apologize. Hey Reddit, it's Marcus again. I wasn't planning on posting an update, but a lot has happened since my original post, and honestly, I need to vent. The aftermath of the complaint. So after I told Hannah she needed to withdraw the complaint, she flat out refused. We didn't talk for a couple days except about basic parenting stuff. The tension was awful. Meanwhile, daycare called me again. The manager said the investigation was ongoing and that Kelsey, the staff member who asked for my ID, had been temporarily reassigned to another room, pending review. She also told me the daycare board had to interview me again because the complaint specifically listed racial profiling. That broke my heart. Kelsey looked like a kid just trying to do her job. She wasn't some hardened racist. I honestly think she was embarrassed enough already. And now she was sitting in meetings with HR and managers over this nonsense. I told the board everything, that I didn't feel discriminated against, that I thought she was just following safety protocol, and that I never wanted to file a complaint in the first place. They thanked me for clarifying, but said they still had to finish the process because once a formal complaint is made, it can't just be erased. So, Hannah's decision had consequences I couldn't undo. The confrontation with Hannah. I tried again to explain my side. I told Hannah point blank, she wasn't helping me. She was speaking for me, instead of listening to me. And worst of all, she could ruin a young woman's career over something that wasn't racist. Hannah got defensive and said, so what, Marcus, you just want to let people walk all over you? You think they'd have asked a white dad for ID? I said, yes. They ask everyone for ID if they don't know them. That's literally their policy. She rolled her eyes and said, you're too used to being the bigger person. You shouldn't have to be. We ended up shouting at each other. Ethan was in the next room, and I realized I couldn't keep screaming in front of my kid, so I shut it down. But inside, I was boiling. Talking to other parents. A week later, I ran into one of the moms from daycare at the grocery store. She was part of the group that helped Hannah file the complaint. She said something like, I'm so glad your girlfriend spoke up for you. That poor girl at daycare was way out of line. I told her straight up, no, she wasn't. She was doing her job. I never wanted that complaint filed. The mom looked shocked, like she didn't know what to say. She muttered something about just trying to help and walked away. That confirmed what I'd been thinking all along, none of this was about me. It was about Hannah and those moms wanting to feel like heroes. The daycare's decision. Eventually, the daycare finished their investigation. They concluded that Kelsey did nothing wrong. She followed policy, documented everything, and even had support from other staff. But the whole ordeal still left a mark. The manager told me off the record that Kelsey had been crying at work, worried she'd lose her job or be labeled racist. She said Kelsey was shaken up enough that she's considering leaving childcare altogether. That crushed me. A 20-year-old almost lost her career because my girlfriend wanted to fight a battle that wasn't hers. The breaking point with Hannah. After hearing that, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I sat Hannah down and said, you need to apologize. Not just to me. To Kelsey. You dragged her through hell for nothing. You embarrassed me, you spoke for me when I didn't ask you to, and you made me feel like a prop in your social justice crusade. Hannah started crying again, saying, I was just trying to protect you. You don't see the racism, but I do. You've normalized it. I said, no, Hannah. I see racism. I've lived it. And I know the difference between racism and safety protocol. What you did wasn't protecting me, it was about you wanting to look like the savior. You used my race and my son's identity to boost yourself. That turned into another massive fight. She accused me of not appreciating her, of not standing up for myself, of undermining her in front of others. I told her if she couldn't respect my voice when it came to my own experiences, then maybe she didn't really respect me at all. Where things stand now, we've been rocky since then. Honestly, I don't know where this relationship is heading. We still live together because of Ethan, but things are tense. She hasn't apologized to me or Kelsey. She still thinks she did the right thing. I, on the other hand, feel betrayed. I feel like she doesn't trust me to know my own experience as a black man in America. Like she thinks she knows better than me about racism. And that's not something I can just ignore. We haven't talked about breaking up yet, but the thought is there in the back of my head. I love Hannah, but this whole situation has made me see her differently. The only silver lining is Ethan. He's too young to understand any of this, but he's my anchor right now. I want him to grow up knowing the difference between actual racism and people weaponizing it for their own ego. Final thoughts. So yeah, Reddit, that's where things stand. Kelsey was cleared, but hurt. I feel disrespected in my own relationship. And Hannah thinks she's a hero when really she made everything worse. I don't know what's going to happen with us, but I do know one thing, I'll never let anyone speak for me about my own experience again. Verdict for me after the update, I'm still NTA, and if anything, Hannah doubled down on being the AH. Stories number 7. AIO because I don't want to give my daughter my boyfriend's last name. I, 24F, am 37 weeks pregnant with my, 27M, BF. This is my first child and I originally wanted to be married before the baby gets here, kinda like a shotgun wedding vibe or even eloped, because I never believed in having kids out of marriage. I feel like my BF let me think that's what we were going to do up until about a month ago, when he said he's not ready for that. Which hurt my feelings but is fine, but in return I don't believe the baby should have his last name because we aren't married. He says that he wants to get married in like 2 years or whatever and I said that's fine and we can change our daughter name when the time comes, but until that I don't see a reason for her to have his last name. He does provide for us but I feel like he is doing what he's supposed to do as a man and as the father of our child. But I told him he doesn't get rewarded for doing what he's supposed to do. Am I wrong for feeling like this? Side note, he only came to 2 of my many OB appointments and didn't stop smoking and drinking, which I thought he would do with me because as a couple we are pregnant. And I've been working, as a CNA, up until this week, which is my last week. It's not a big deal, I don't resent him for that, but I feel like if you're not going above and beyond that he shouldn't get the satisfaction of our baby having his last name unless we are going to be a real family. Stories number 8. I am 21 had sex with a friend F21. How do we proceed? To give some backstory, me and some friends, 3 guys, 4 girls, went a trip together last week. We rented out a 3-bedroom Airbnb and divided the rooms as such. Guy A and girl A were in the first room, they're a couple, and the only people in a relationship in our friend group, guys B, me, and C in the second room, and girls B, C, and D in the third room. Throughout the week we went out and partied a ton, so by the time the weekend hit, I was burnt out and extremely sleep deprived, so I told everyone else that on Sunday night I was going to stay in while they all went out. After saying I was going to stay in for the night, girl B also decided she was going to stay in. After everyone else had headed out for the night, we both decided to make a quick dinner together, before going to bed relatively early. After making dinner, we both went to our rooms to shower and get ready for bed, and as I was finishing up and getting into bed, girl B came into my room and asked if she could sleep in the room with me. She rationalized that when everyone else got back home they'd make a ton of noise and she really wanted to sleep. The room I was in was a king-size bed, me and Guy C just put a pillow in the middle as a divider, while the room the 3 girls were in was a 2-bunk bed setup, 4 beds total. She said it'd be easier and more comfortable for Guy C to just sleep on one of the bunk beds in room 3, than for us to take the bunk bed room and force someone to sleep on the couch in the living room. I agreed and sent a text to a Guy C telling him that we'd switched the room arrangements for the night. Shortly after, she got in bed and we talked, and sparing the details became us cuddling, which became us kissing, which turned into sex. After we had sex, we both showered together before cuddling again and falling asleep together. On Monday, after waking up, things went back to normal between us. Nobody suspected we had sex. We've been friends since our freshman year, never dated, so nobody in our friends group knew nor said anything about it. We all traveled back home on yesterday, and since then our communication has been what it normally is, just sending each other memes and gossiping in our group chat. Now here comes my dilemma. Is the onus on me to initiate a conversation about what happened between us? If I'm being honest with myself, I've always found her to be super cute and she has a lovely personality, but I assumed that after the first 6 months of being friends, that nothing would ever happen between us, and I was totally okay with that reality. After things happened, I do feel like my feelings for her have reignited. However, I'm not sure how to talk to her about these feelings, nor do I know if they're reciprocated. Do I text/call her? Ask her out on a date to talk? Just casually ask her out for coffee, something we've done several times? Any advice would be appreciated, and I'm happy to provide any additional context that I might have overlooked. Edit update. I texted her, she FaceTimed me a couple minutes later. Apparently she thought I wasn't into her because I didn't bring it up directly with her the next day. I clarified things and was honest about my feelings, and fortunately they were reciprocated. We laughed and are going to go out for a casual dinner in a couple hours. I also want to add, I wasn't confused as to whether or not she was into me physically, but more so wanting more than just casual sex. Stories number 9. My fiancé blew our wedding money on a Vegas trip, so I cancelled the trip myself. Hi Reddit, buckle up because I need to vent and get some outside perspective. I'm Melissa, 28F. I've been engaged to my fiancé James, 30M, for about a year and a half. We've been together for 5 years, and like a lot of couples, we decided to split the wedding costs evenly. We're not rich, so we've been saving carefully. I've been setting aside money from every paycheck, and James claimed he was doing the same. We had a venue picked out, a gorgeous historic estate just outside the city. It's a bit pricey, but nothing insane. Last month, the coordinator asked for the deposit to lock in our date. James had been the one handling the back and forth with them, so I transferred him $3,000, my half of the deposit. He told me he'd combine it with his half and send it to the venue. I didn't think twice. I trusted him. The discovery. Fast forward to yesterday. I get an email from the venue coordinator, politely reminding me that they still hadn't received the deposit and asking if we were still interested in reserving the date. My stomach dropped. I immediately called James at work and asked, what's going on? The venue says they never got the deposit. He went quiet for a second and then laughed awkwardly, saying, oh, yeah, about that. Turns out, instead of paying the venue, James used my $3,000, plus about $2,000 of his own, to book a Las Vegas bachelor party trip for himself and his 3 closest friends. Flights, hotel, bottle service, the whole thing. When I asked him why, he grinned and said, don't worry, babe. I'll win it back at the tables. I swear, I almost dropped the phone. The confrontation. When he got home, I was furious. I asked him how he could possibly think blowing our wedding money on Vegas was a good idea. He said, relax, I've got it under control. It's my bachelor party, it's supposed to be the best weekend of my life. We'll still have plenty of time to pay the deposit later. I told him the venue could easily book out our date if we didn't pay soon. He shrugged and said, then we'll pick another venue. The casual way he dismissed months of planning made me feel sick. Then he doubled down, accusing me of being controlling and not trusting him. He said, this is what guys do, Melissa. It's my one last weekend of freedom before the wedding. Stop acting like my mom. That pushed me over the edge. What I did next. I happened to be the one who set up part of the booking. James used my card for one of the hotel confirmations because he said his credit limit was tight. So you better believe I logged in, pulled up the reservation, and canceled the entire trip. Flights, hotel, VIP table, all gone. I got most of the money refunded since it was still early enough. When James found out, he went ballistic. He said I embarrassed him in front of his friends, and ruined the best weekend of his life. I told him if he wanted to gamble, he could do it with his own money, not mine, and definitely not money that was supposed to go toward our wedding. The fallout. Now things are tense. James's friends are angry at me. Apparently, they had been bragging to people about their upcoming Vegas trip, and now they're blaming me for ruining it. One of them even texted me saying, you're going to make James the most miserable groom alive. Hope you're happy. Then James's mom, Linda, 55F, called me and said, boys will be boys. You need to let him have fun before he settles down. Don't make this into a bigger deal than it is. I told her, Linda, he spent the wedding money. This isn't about fun, this is about responsibility. She just sighed and said I was being uptight. On the other hand, my best friend Caroline, 29F, said I was absolutely right and that if James doesn't understand why this is a deal-breaker level issue, I should reconsider marrying him. Some of our mutual friends, though, think I overstepped by canceling his trip, saying I humiliated him and should have just let him go and figured out the money situation later. Where I'm at right now, James isn't really speaking to me unless it's to complain. He says I've ruined his bachelor party and embarrassed him in front of his friends. He still insists he would have won the money back in Vegas, which, come on, that's not how casinos work. I, meanwhile, feel like my trust has been shattered. This wasn't just boys having fun. This was him taking thousands of dollars I worked hard to save, lying to me, and gambling with our wedding. I can't believe I even have to ask this, but part of me wonders, was I wrong for canceling the trip? Should I have let him go and dealt with the consequences afterward? Update, my fiancé blew our wedding money on a Vegas trip, so I cancelled the trip myself. Hi again, Reddit. I didn't expect my first post to blow up the way it did. I honestly just needed to vent, but the responses really opened my eyes. A lot of you were blunt, and right, about me needing to look at the bigger picture with James, and I've been doing a lot of soul-searching since then. It's been 2 weeks since everything went down, and I figured I'd give you an update. The immediate aftermath. The night I cancelled the Vegas trip, James stormed out and went to stay at his buddy Ryan's place. He ignored my texts for a couple of days, then finally came back to talk. That talk was basically him sulking on the couch and repeating the same excuses. He deserved the trip. I humiliated him by canceling it. He would have won the money back. I was being selfish for making everything about the wedding. I asked him point blank, how could you lie to me about paying the deposit? His response. It's not lying, it's just changing priorities. That sentence has been burned into my brain ever since. The venue situation. For those wondering, yes, we lost our original wedding date. The venue gave us a week's grace period, but since James never paid, the date was scooped up by another couple. When I told James this, his reaction was literally, who cares? We'll just find another place. Or get married in Vegas instead, problem solved. That was the first time I realized he might not take this marriage as seriously as I thought. Family drama. Oh boy, where do I even start? Linda, his mom, has doubled down on defending him. She told me I crushed his spirit and that every man deserves one last hurrah. She actually suggested I pay for a do-over trip for him as a way to make peace. I laughed in her face. Meanwhile, my parents are livid, at James. My dad, Michael, 58M, told me, if he can't handle money responsibly now, what makes you think he'll suddenly change after you're married? My mom, Diane, 56F, gently asked if I wanted her to help cover the deposit at a different venue. I love her, but the thought of my parents bailing out my fiancé's mistake made me feel gross. And then there are James's friends. Ethan actually messaged me on Facebook calling me a buzzkill and saying James is too good for someone so controlling. Kyle texted me a thumbs down emoji when the trip officially disappeared from their group chat. Real mature, guys. My breaking point. The final straw for me wasn't the money. It wasn't even the lying. It was last weekend when James casually mentioned that he and Ryan had gone to the local casino, with money he borrowed from Ethan. He grinned while telling me, like it was some funny anecdote. I just stared at him and said, so you're already gambling again, after everything that just happened? He shrugged and said, it's not a big deal. I only lost $200. That was it for me. The trust is gone. What I did next? I told James the first needed space and asked him to move back in with Ryan for now. He tried to argue, but when I stood my ground, he packed a bag and left. I've since called the venue coordinator and explained the situation. She was sympathetic but said the only dates left this year are weekdays, and honestly, I'm not even sure I want to marry him right now, let alone rush into booking another venue. I've also quietly started moving my savings into a separate account. James and I don't fully share finances yet, but I had linked accounts for convenience. Not anymore. Where my head's at, I keep replaying the past few months in my head. The lies, the dismissiveness, the way he tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem for being upset about losing thousands of dollars. Reddit, I don't think I can marry this man. It breaks my heart because I loved the version of James the first thought I knew. But the James standing in front of me now? The one who gambles away our wedding fund, prioritizes a Vegas trip over our future, and lets his friends call me controlling. That's not someone I can build a life with. Caroline, my best friend, came over last night and said something that stuck with me. Melissa, weddings come and go. Marriage is about who you're tied to every single day. Do you really want to tie yourself to someone you can't even trust with a deposit? She's right. So what now? James keeps texting me like nothing's wrong, asking if I've cooled off yet and if we can start venue shopping again. He's acting like the only thing standing between us and wedded bliss is me overreacting. Meanwhile, my gut is screaming at me that this isn't about the wedding. It's about the fact that James showed me who he really is, reckless, dishonest, and more worried about impressing his friends than protecting our future. I haven't officially broken off the engagement yet, but I'm leaning that way. I just need to gather the courage to say the words out loud. Final update, my fiancé spent our wedding money on a Vegas trip. Hi again, Reddit. It's been just over 4 months since my last update, and a lot has happened. This will probably be my final post because I finally have closure, and I want to thank everyone who helped me see the reality of my situation. The breakup. 2 days after my last update, James came by to apologize. Except it wasn't really an apology. It was more of a half-hearted, sorry you're still mad, speech. When I pressed him on whether he understood why his actions destroyed my trust, he said, "You're being dramatic. It was just $3,000. I could have made it back." That was the moment I realized there was no fixing this. I told him I couldn't marry someone who gambled away our future, lied to me, and treated me like a nag for caring about our money. He tried to argue, but when I handed him the ring back, he went silent. He left without another word. The fallout. Linda, his mom, called me the next day and said I was throwing away a good man. I calmly told her I wasn't throwing anything away, James did that himself. Then I blocked her. James's friends went radio silent except for one, Ryan. To my surprise, Ryan actually texted me a few weeks later and said, "I don't blame you. Honestly, James has been spiraling for a while. You dodged a bullet." That hit hard, but it also gave me some weird peace. What happened to James? From what I've heard through mutuals, James never slowed down with the gambling. Apparently he burned through his savings, borrowed from Ethan, and ended up moving back in with Linda. He even lost his job in July because he called in sick 3 Mondays in a row, casino weekends. The kicker. He still tells people I overreacted and that he would have paid me back if I just waited. I wish him well, but I'm not holding my breath. What happened to me? Breaking off the engagement was devastating at first. I cried for weeks, not because I missed James, but because I was mourning the future I thought I'd have. The wedding I dreamed about. The stability I believed in. But slowly, life started to feel lighter. My parents rallied around me. My best friend Caroline practically moved into my apartment for a month to keep me company. I started therapy to work on my self-esteem and boundaries. And I also started traveling. Remember how I saved all that money for the wedding? Well, instead of putting it into another venue, I used a chunk of it to take my parents and Caroline on a weekend trip to Charleston. It wasn't fancy, but it felt healing to be with people who truly appreciated it. The lesson. Looking back now, I don't regret canceling the Vegas trip. I don't regret ending the engagement. What I would regret is if I had ignored all the red flags and tied myself legally and financially to someone who had no problem gambling away our life together. Reddit, you were right, sometimes the hardest choice is the best one.